At my wedding, the moment I had dreamed of my whole life, my ex walked in and tried to destroy everything. The music stopped. My heart froze. His voice cut through the air like a blade. He smirked as if he owned me, as if the years hadn't passed. And right then I realized this was no accident. He came prepared, but so was I. What he didn't know was that I had been waiting for this moment, and what I discovered next changed everything. My name is Emily, and for most of my life, I wanted what every girl dreams of, love that feels safe, real, forever. When I met Daniel, it felt like the universe had finally thrown me a lifeline. He was kind, gentle, patient, the sort of man who opened doors, remembered birthdays, and actually listened when I spoke. The type of man who'd notice if I changed my nail polish or if I seemed quieter than usual. He was everything Ryan never was. Ryan. Even saying his name feels like swallowing broken glass. He wasn't just my ex. He was a storm that nearly destroyed me. Charming when he wanted to be, cruel when it suited him, always with that grin that made strangers think he was some kind of golden boy. They didn't know the truth, but Daniel did. Eventually. The first time I introduced Daniel to my family, my mom whispered to me, "Emily, I've never seen you smile like this before." And it was true. For the first time in years, my laughter wasn't forced. My heart wasn't on guard. With Daniel, I could exhale. Our relationship was steady, healthy. We cooked dinner together, went on long walks, argued about silly things like what movie to watch, but never about loyalty or respect. He never made me question myself. He never gaslit me into thinking my feelings were too much or my tears were inconvenient. That's what life looked like before Ryan came slithering back. It started small. A text, just 2 words. "Congratulations, Emily." I remember staring at it, my stomach twisting. He must have seen the engagement photos online. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My hand shook as I deleted the message, but then the letters started. Anonymous, typed, dropped into Daniel's office mailbox, each one nastier than the last. At first, they accused me of being fake, of hiding some dark past. Then they shifted, calling me a gold digger, warning Daniel he was making the biggest mistake of his life. Daniel showed them to me, his jaw tight. "It's him, isn't it?" he asked. I wanted to say no. I wanted to believe Ryan had finally moved on, but deep down I knew that smug little smile of his lived rent-free in my nightmares. This was exactly the kind of twisted game he'd play. I tried to brush it off to keep planning the wedding. Dresses, flowers, the playlist, the things every bride should focus on. But it felt like every time I took a step forward, Ryan was waiting with another blow to knock me down. One afternoon, my wedding dress went missing from the boutique. The seamstress swore it had been there the night before. They found it 2 days later, crumpled in a storage room, the lace slashed in jagged lines. I cried for hours. I wanted it to be a coincidence, an accident, but in my gut, I knew better. Still, Daniel held me. "We'll fix it," he promised. "We'll get another. He won't win." I clung to his words. But late at night, when he was asleep, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying Ryan's voice in my head. "He won't let you be happy without him." That's what he once told me, the night I finally walked out. I remember it too clearly. The way he cornered me in our apartment, his eyes wild. "You'll regret this, Emily. You'll never find someone who loves you like I do. If you leave, I'll make sure you never forget me." It sounded like an empty threat back then, but now it felt like prophecy. I told myself not to let him get into my head, but he was already there. A week before the wedding, an envelope arrived at my doorstep. No return address. Inside were photos, blurry, grainy, but clear enough to twist the knife. They showed me sitting at a cafe, across from Ryan. Except here's the truth. I had never met him there. The photos were doctored, my face pasted into an image that never happened. I knew instantly it was fake, but would Daniel? My chest tightened as I handed him the photos. My worst fear wasn't Ryan's lies. It was that Daniel might believe them. Daniel's eyes scanned the pictures. He went quiet. Too quiet. I felt my lungs collapsing, my heart breaking. Then he looked up. "I know this isn't real," he said firmly. "He's trying to mess with us." Relief washed over me, but behind it was another emotion I couldn't ignore, fear. Because if Ryan was willing to go this far, what would he try next? I couldn't shake the feeling he wasn't done, not even close. And I was right. The night before my wedding, I sat alone in my room staring at my reflection. My dress, repaired, stitched with care, hung nearby. My veil glowed like a halo in the lamplight, but I didn't feel like a bride. I felt like prey. Tears blurred my vision. I hated that he still had this power over me, that even on the eve of my happiest day, I was thinking of him. My phone buzzed. A text. My blood turned to ice. It was from an unknown number. Tomorrow, everyone will know the truth about you. I dropped the phone. My hands trembled. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to run away. But then, slowly, a different thought took root. A dangerous one. What if I stopped running? What if I turned this around? Because Ryan wasn't the only one with secrets. I had mine too. And maybe it was finally time to use them. But what I discovered next changed everything. The morning of my wedding, the sun rose too bright, too cruel. I wanted peace. Instead, I felt hunted. I tried to convince myself it would be fine, that Ryan's threats were just empty noise. But I knew him too well. He thrived on chaos, and I was his favorite target. It began with whispers. Guests arriving early had already heard rumors. Someone had told them I wasn't the perfect bride I pretended to be, that I had cheated on Daniel, that I had a dark past I was hiding. I heard 2 cousins whispering as I walked past the hallway. I heard she was still seeing her ex. Can you imagine? They didn't know I was standing there. My throat closed, my hands curled into fists. He was poisoning them, already. When I reached the bridal suite, my maid of honor, Sophie, looked pale. She closed the door behind me, voice trembling. Emily, there's something you need to see. She handed me her phone, a post, anonymous, but shared in a local community group. My name, my photo, accusations written in bold letters. Bride cheats with ex-boyfriend weeks before wedding. Groom doesn't know the truth. Hundreds of comments, strangers tearing me apart. Trash. Poor guy, he deserves better. Some people never change. I felt sick. I pressed a hand to my stomach like I could keep myself from shattering. Daniel knocked softly a few minutes later. Can I come in? His voice was steady, but I knew him. He was holding himself together for me. When he walked in, his face was pale too. He had his phone in hand. I don't believe it, he said immediately. His eyes searched mine. But Emily, people are saying it's everywhere. My colleagues are texting me. Even my boss saw it. My lips trembled. Daniel, I swear, I know. He cut me off, firm, unshakable. I know it's him. I trust you, but he's not stopping Emily. He's trying to break us before we even begin. I wanted to collapse into his arms, but there was a seed of terror inside me because Ryan wasn't finished, not by a long shot. By noon, just hours before the ceremony, another blow landed. The wedding planner burst into the suite, frantic. The florist is refusing delivery, she said. They claim you canceled this morning. What? My voice cracked. I didn't cancel anything. I know, she said quickly, but they got a call from someone claiming to be you. They said you changed your mind. Sophie swore under her breath. It's him. It has to be. I wanted to scream. Flowers weren't the end of the world, but it was another fracture, another attempt to make the day collapse. It didn't stop there. The caterer called next. Same story. A woman with my name had canceled the menu. Then the DJ called. Same again. Every detail I had poured myself into was unraveling. Ryan was everywhere, pulling strings, tearing threads, watching, I knew, from some dark corner, laughing at how easily he could undo me. By the time the guests were seated, I felt hollow. My makeup was perfect, my dress restored, but inside I was trembling. I kept hearing his voice in my head. You'll regret this, Emily. And then he arrived. I'll never forget the sound. The church doors creaking open, the music screeching to a halt, heads turning all at once. And there he was, Ryan. My past dressed in arrogance, his suit sharp, his smile sharper, like he belonged there. The air shifted. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Stop this wedding, he shouted. His voice echoed like thunder. I froze at the altar. Daniel's grip on my hand tightened. My knees shook beneath the gown. Ryan walked forward, slow, deliberate. Every eye followed him. She doesn't deserve you, he sneered at Daniel. You don't know the real Emily. She's been lying to you. She's been lying to everyone. Gasps, murmurs, whispers crawling through the pews. I wanted to scream at him to stop, but I couldn't move. My mouth wouldn't work. He turned to the crowd. You all think she's perfect? She's not. She's been cheating with me right up until this wedding. Laughter from him, not the crowd. They were stunned. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would explode. My vision blurred. My body betrayed me, shaking. I heard someone whisper, "Is it true?" Daniel spoke then, his voice like steel. "Ryan, get out." But Ryan only smirked. "Why don't you ask her first?" Ask her where she was last month, that night she told you she was working late." I couldn't breathe. He was twisting lies from scraps of truth, spinning them into daggers. Daniel turned to me, eyes locked on mine, not accusing, just searching. "Emily," tears burned my eyes. "He's lying." My voice cracked, desperate. "You know he's lying." But doubt, that was Ryan's weapon. He knew how to plant it like a seed, how to water it until it grew. He stepped closer, pulling a folded piece of paper from his jacket. "You want proof?" He held it up for everyone to see, a printed email, supposedly from me. I felt my blood run cold. It looked real. My email address, my words, or what looked like them. "I miss you, Ryan." I wish I could tell Daniel the truth. The crowd gasped. I could hear the whispers multiplying. "She wrote that? Maybe it's true. Oh my God!" I shook my head violently. "That's not mine. I never wrote that." My voice cracked. Ryan smiled, cruel, triumphant. "Of course you'll deny it. You've always been a liar, Emily." Daniel's jaw clenched. His eyes flicked between the paper and my face. The weight of the entire room pressed down on him, on us. And for a moment, just a sliver of a moment, I saw it. The crack, the hesitation. That was Ryan's victory. Not proving the lie, but making Daniel wonder, making everyone wonder. The humiliation was unbearable. My cheeks burned, my stomach twisted. I wanted to vanish, to melt into the floor, and Ryan knew it. He leaned closer, his whisper sharp as a knife. "Told you, Emily, I'll never let you be happy without me." I felt myself breaking in front of my family, my friends, my husband-to-be. The nightmare was real, but beneath the panic, something else flickered. A spark, a rage so deep it burned away the fear, because he thought he had won, and that was his mistake. I wasn't the girl who used to beg him to stop. I wasn't the girl he controlled, not anymore. I straightened my spine, my voice shook, but I forced the words out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're right about one thing, Ryan," I said. The church went silent. All eyes snapped to me. He smirked, expecting me to crumble. Instead, I took a deep breath. My heart thundered, my hands clenched into fists. "You do have secrets, but so do I." A ripple went through the crowd. Ryan's smirk faltered, and in that split second, I saw it, his first flicker of doubt. But what he didn't know was that I had been planning for this. And his downfall was only just beginning. I thought I had already hit rock bottom, but I was wrong. Because in that church, with Ryan's lies dripping into every corner, I saw the doubt in people's eyes. People I loved, people I trusted. And worst of all, I saw Daniel fighting with himself. Not because he didn't love me, but because Ryan was so damn good at making lies look like truth. The ceremony stopped. Guests whispered. My mother looked pale. My father sat frozen like someone had punched him. My bridesmaids hovered helplessly. And me? I just stood there in my white dress, my world unraveling, humiliated in front of everyone. Ryan fed off it. His smile widened, his voice rose. He was enjoying every second. That was my breaking point. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the fake letter from his hand and rip it into 1,000 pieces. I wanted to claw the smug expression off his face, but instead I froze. Because for the first time in years, I felt powerless, just like before. Just like all those nights he told me no one would ever believe me. Just like the day he laughed when I begged him to stop calling me worthless. It was happening again, and it was working. I excused myself. My legs wobbled as I stumbled into the bridal room. Sophie followed, her hand on my back. "Emily, breathe," she whispered, but I couldn't. The air wouldn't come. My chest was locked tight. What if they believe him? My voice cracked. What if Daniel believes him? Sophie's grip tightened. He doesn't. I saw his face. He loves you. Love isn't always enough, I whispered. My reflection in the mirror mocked me, a bride crumbling under the weight of a man I should have left behind years ago. Tears blurred my vision. My makeup smeared. I hated myself for letting Ryan do this again, for letting him live in my head, for giving him the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. That was the lowest I had ever been. My wedding, the day that should have been joy, had turned into his stage, his show. But rock bottom has a strange way of giving you clarity, because as I stared at my ruined reflection, I remembered something I had buried away, Ryan's secret. It had started months ago, before the engagement. A mutual friend had hinted that Ryan was in trouble, that his perfect life, the career, the money, the image he flaunted, wasn't as shiny as it looked. At first, I didn't care. I didn't want anything to do with him. But then one night, curiosity got the better of me. I did what he used to do to me, snooped. And what I found was a crack. Unpaid debts, emails left open on a shared account we'd once used, bank statements that didn't add up. I didn't dig deeper then because I was too focused on building my new life with Daniel. But the memory came back to me now like a light in the darkness. Ryan wasn't untouchable. He was hiding something. And suddenly I realized I didn't have to just survive him. I could beat him. The rage that had been simmering all day ignited into something sharper. My tears dried, my breathing steadied. I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. I turned to Sophie, my voice steadier than I expected. He thinks he's won, but he doesn't know what I know. Her brows furrowed. What do you mean? I lowered my voice. Ryan's not as clean as he pretends. He's hiding something. Money, lies, maybe worse. I just have to prove it. Sophie's eyes widened, then hardened. She wasn't just my maid of honor. She had been there through the worst of Ryan. She wanted him gone as much as I did. What do you need me to do? She asked. That was the moment I realized I wasn't alone. I had an ally. The rest of the ceremony? A blur. Somehow, Daniel and I managed to get through the motions, though everything felt fractured. Guests left murmuring, unsure of what to believe. Ryan had left, satisfied with the chaos he'd created. But I wasn't broken anymore. I was furious. That night, instead of lying awake in fear, I pulled out my laptop. Sophie sat beside me, her shoes kicked off, her hair falling loose. We weren't bridesmaids and brides anymore. We were soldiers plotting war. I typed in old logins, passwords Ryan had once forced me to share. Some didn't work, but some still did. And there it was. A trail of transactions. Money flowing in and out. Some to accounts I didn't recognize. Some labeled as consulting fees that made no sense. Sophie leaned over my shoulder. Emily, this looks like fraud. It was worse. I dug deeper. Screenshots, records, saved emails, deals with clients that didn't exist, loans from shady lenders, a spreadsheet that looked suspiciously like an embezzlement scheme. Ryan wasn't just cruel, he was reckless, and I had the proof. I sat back in my chair, my pulse racing. The pieces clicked together in my head. Ryan thought he could destroy me with lies, but I could destroy him with the truth. Not by fighting him in private, not by screaming at him in the dark, but by doing exactly what he had done to me, exposing him publicly. Sophie grinned, her eyes blazing. So what's the plan? I didn't answer right away, because this wasn't just about exposing him. It had to be bigger, more poetic. He wanted to ruin my wedding? Fine. Then I'd make his downfall the grand finale. I closed the laptop slowly, a smile tugging at my lips for the first time in days. Let's just say, I whispered, he gave me the stage. Now I'm going to take it back. And for the first time since he walked through those church doors, I felt something dangerous, hope. Because Ryan had pushed me to rock bottom, but from down here, the only way left to go was up. And he had no idea what was coming. Ryan thought he had broken me. He thought my wedding would be the stage where he got to laugh, to humiliate me, to make everyone doubt who I was. But what he didn't know was that I had been handed a weapon sharper than anything he could imagine, and I was going to use it. The first step was patience. Sophie and I didn't rush. We gathered, we copied, we screenshotted every email, every invoice, every suspicious wire transfer that connected Ryan to things no one should have touched. I knew I couldn't just throw it in his face. That's what he wanted. A screaming match in private where he could twist my words. No, my revenge had to mirror his, public. I had to make sure everyone saw who he really was. The opportunity came faster than I expected. 2 weeks after the wedding, Daniel and I were invited to a charity gala. It was a big event, hosted by people Ryan adored sucking up to, people whose approval he craved, people who thought of him as a charming, successful man. And, of course, Ryan would be there. I almost said no. The thought of being in the same room as him made my skin crawl, but then I realized this was the perfect stage. He had humiliated me. At my happiest moment, I would expose him at his. The night of the gala, Sophie and I worked like spies. She carried a discreet folder in her clutch filled with carefully printed documents, proof of embezzlement, fake clients, unpaid loans. I carried a USB drive with the digital evidence in case anyone needed more than paper. When we walked into that ballroom, the chandeliers glittered like stars. Laughter echoed. The clinking of glasses filled the air. Everyone was dressed in black tie elegance, and there was Ryan, smiling, toasting, acting like nothing had ever happened. He spotted me instantly. That smug grin crept onto his face like a shadow. "Well, if it isn't the runaway bride," he said smoothly when he sauntered over. Or should I say Mrs. Daniels, though who knows for how long? His words cut, but this time I didn't flinch. I smiled back, calm, cold, dangerous. "You're right, Ryan," I said softly. Who knows how long anything lasts? Careers, reputations, lies. For the first time, his grin faltered. The speeches began later that evening. Important donors, community leaders, all standing at the podium to talk about their missions, their charities, their contributions. Ryan loved these moments. He always positioned himself near the stage, close enough to be noticed, far enough to pretend it was coincidence. And sure enough, when the host invited our generous supporter, Mr. Ryan Carter, to speak, he practically glided up the steps. He launched into his usual performance, fake humility, charming anecdotes, sprinkling in the illusion of wealth and success. The crowd clapped politely. And that's when I moved. I didn't storm the stage. I didn't scream. I didn't need to. Instead, I walked calmly to the event organizer, leaned down, and whispered, "You might want to see this before your keynote finishes." I handed her the folder. Her eyes scanned the first page, then the second. Her mouth tightened. She whispered something to the co-chair beside her. He paled. The ripple began. Organizers whispering to donors, donors whispering to guests, guests staring at Ryan. Ryan kept talking, oblivious, until the whispers grew louder than his voice. "Ladies and gentlemen," he faltered, eyes darting. I was just saying." And then the organizer walked up to the podium, calm, firm, holding the folder. "Mr. Carter," she said into the microphone, her voice carrying through the ballroom, "would you like to explain these?" She held up the documents. The microphone picked up the shuffle of papers. The projector flickered to life, because Sophie, bless her, had already slipped the USB into the tech booth. Suddenly, the screens around the ballroom lit up. Not slides of smiling children, not sponsor logos, but Ryan's secrets, bank transfers, fake invoices, debt collection notices, all with his name. Gasps filled the room. Some people covered their mouths, others stood. Ryan's face went from confident to confused to terrified in seconds. This is taken out of context," he shouted, his voice cracking. It's lies. Someone's framing me." But no one believed him. Not after the meticulous detail splashed across 3 giant screens. Not after the numbers, the signatures, the undeniable proof. His charm shattered, his mask slipped, and for the first time, everyone saw what I had always known. Ryan wasn't powerful. He wasn't successful. He was a fraud. The fallout was immediate. Guests walked out. Business partners whispered and shook their heads. The organizers asked Ryan to leave, security escorting him out of the ballroom like a criminal. Cameras caught everything. By the time I stepped outside later that night, Ryan's name was already trending online. Local businessman accused of fraud. Charity gala turns into scandal. Ryan Carter exposed. All the lies he'd thrown at me, all the humiliation he tried to drown me in, it was all gone, because now he was the one drowning. The next day, he called, over and over. "Emily, please, you don't understand. They'll ruin me. I could lose everything." His voice shook. He wasn't smug anymore. He wasn't charming. He was begging, but I didn't answer. Because what could I possibly say to the man who tried to ruin my wedding, my love, my life? This wasn't my doing. I reminded myself, this was his. His choices, his lies, his downfall, all I did was let the truth breathe. The satisfaction was sharp, clean, cathartic. I hadn't screamed, I hadn't clawed, I hadn't stooped to his level. I had simply handed the world the truth, and Ryan had destroyed himself. That was the poetry of it. He had tried to write my story, a tragedy where I played the broken bride. Instead, I rewrote it, and he became the villain of his own downfall. But revenge, no matter how satisfying, is never the full ending. Because as I stood there, watching Ryan's world collapse, I realized something even sweeter. I was free. He couldn't touch me anymore. Not with his lies, not with his manipulation, not with his smug smile. I had taken back my voice, my stage, my life, and nothing, not even Ryan's ghost, would ever take that away again. But just when I thought it was over, the final twist came, because a week later I received a message, not from Ryan, from someone else, and what I discovered next changed everything. The days after the gala felt like waking up from a storm. For months, I had been living under Ryan's shadow, his lies, his games, his endless need to twist the truth until I questioned my own reality. But suddenly, it was gone. I didn't realize how heavy the weight had been until it lifted. Ryan's world unraveled quickly. Business partners pulled out. His company accounts were frozen. Clients demanded refunds he couldn't pay. By the end of the month, he wasn't the man people whispered about admiringly. He was the cautionary tale on every tongue. And me? For the first time, I wasn't the girl Ryan tried to humiliate. I wasn't the bride who almost lost everything. I was just Emily, whole, untouched, stronger than I'd ever been. Daniel and I spent those weeks quietly rebuilding our lives. We didn't rush. We didn't push away the pain. Instead, we held it, faced it, learned from it. Every night, he'd take my hand and say softly, "We survived." And every night, I believed it a little more. Sophie, too, became something more than just a friend. She was my anchor, my reminder that truth always finds its way to the surface. We laughed more in those weeks than I thought possible after everything. It felt like I'd been given a second chance at the life Ryan had tried to burn down. Ryan tried reaching out a few more times. At first, it was anger. Voicemails full of venom. "You'll regret this, Emily. You think they'll believe you forever? I'll rebuild. I'll come back." Then came the pleading. "Please, just meet with me. We can fix this. You don't understand what they'll do to me." But I never answered, because the truth is, I understood perfectly. He had built his empire on lies, and like all fragile towers, the first strong wind brought it crumbling down. One afternoon, weeks later, I passed him on the street. Or rather, what was left of him. His suit, once tailored and crisp, was wrinkled. His eyes, once sharp with arrogance, were dull and tired. He looked smaller, deflated. For a moment, he opened his mouth, as if to say something, but when he saw Daniel's hand in mine, he froze. And that was it. That was the moment I knew. Ryan hadn't just lost money. He hadn't just lost reputation. He had lost me. That realization was better than any revenge. Because the truth is, revenge is just a spark. It burns bright, it stings, it dazzles, but freedom, real freedom, that's the fire that keeps you warm long after the smoke clears. And I was free. The wedding photos arrived weeks later. Not the ones Ryan tried to taint, but the real ones. The laughter, the dancing, the joy. At first, I thought they'd be painful to look at. A reminder of everything that went wrong. But as I flipped through them, something shifted. Because for every moment Ryan tried to poison, there were dozens more he could never touch. The way Daniel looked at me when I walked down the aisle, the way my parents cried during the vows, the way Sophie raised her glass during the toast, her eyes fierce with loyalty. Those moments were mine, untouchable, pure. Ryan never got to take them. And so slowly, life moved forward. Daniel and I built a home filled with laughter instead of secrets. My parents, once worried, told me they had never seen me so sure of myself. Sophie became family. And Ryan? He faded into the background, a ghost of who he once pretended to be. People sometimes ask me if I regret it, if I regret giving him that stage at the gala, if I regret making his downfall so public, and the answer is simple, no. Because Ryan had chosen the battlefield long before I did, he made the stage his weapon. I simply turned the lights on and let everyone see what was already there. That's not cruelty. That's justice. But the part that still lingers isn't Ryan at all. It's the silence. The beautiful, healing silence that comes when a manipulator's voice no longer lives in your head. For the first time in years, I can hear myself think. I can hear myself dream. And in that silence, I've found something far greater than revenge. I've found peace. The last time I ever saw Ryan, really saw him, he was standing alone outside a cafe. His shoulders hunched, his phone pressed to his ear. Whoever was on the other side, he was begging. And as I walked past without stopping, without flinching, I realized something. That was the day he realized he'd lost everything, and that was the day I finally knew I had won.